Hey everybody, it is Chad and Jason again here for Thornhill Construction. We're addressing some of the questions we get often on the website, and one of those is, what does the elevation number mean on my flood map, right? Yeah. So you'll see people with VE 23, and that's common. This is the velocity zone, and then this is going to be that number, that magic number everybody has questions about.
Right, that references the actual elevation. So how high is my house going to be? That's the one of the number one questions we get kind of on a weekly basis is, so I got my elevation certificate, or I'm looking at buying I think I found the perfect lot, and my realtor told me it's in flood zone VE 23 or what have you, or whatever the number might be. We get that call quite a bit. So unfortunately, there are some a little bit of misconception sometimes about what that number means. So hopefully maybe we can clear some of those up real quick.
Yeah, and I've drawn here a little like sample of what we'd have on the beach. You know, obviously
Gotcha.
our beach is kind of like this area right here.
Okay.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's going to be 0 feet.
Yeah. So where the water actually meets the land, whether it's in a river or whether it's at the beach line, that is considered mean sea level. So there's a range where the data tells us that the spot that the water and the land on average meet is mean sea level. That's
Okay.
basically where the sea and the land always meets. Obviously, tide changes it a little bit daily, but pretty much where the water meets the land is always the same. So if you want to put a mark and just call that's 0. That is base flood elevation 0. That's, the water is meeting the shore, and our real estate begins.
Well,
So 0 feet.
so
sea
this
level.
23, I think people think a lot of times that means this number from here to here has to be 23.
Right.
But I think that's not where.
Yeah, so that's the big misconception is that, again, I'll get a phone call and say, my real estate agent or my surveyor has given me my elevation certificate on my new property, and it says velocity 23. So how much does it cost me to build my house 23 foot above the ground? So that's the question I get, and unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess we could say, is the good news is it doesn't necessarily need to be 23 foot above the ground. So it does need to be 23 foot above something, but unless your house is being built in the water, you have some land, and there's a value of that land. So
Let's give an example. Like,
Okay.
so it came in at 12 feet. My ground's 12 feet.
okay, perfect.
And so it's 12 feet above sea level, right?
That's right.
So that would be my sea level mark, and I'm 12 feet. So how high would I need? What would this distance be to build my house?
Yeah, so your house basically needs to be an 11-foot elevated structure, because you have the first 12 foot of elevation naturally. So your property has elevated itself above sea level already, just with from the dirt that you bought.
So it's going to be 23, not minus 12, right?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be what they assign
That's right.
what this number is. So 23 minus 12 is going to equal 11 feet.
Right.
Now, that's going to put you at floodplain.
That's exactly right. So now most of the municipalities and towns along at least the Mississippi Gulf Coast, they will require some additional footage just to be able to build. So
Okay.
most of the towns require a extra foot of construction. So they want the structure a minimum of 1 foot above what's required, and they call it freeboard. So that's really a safety net for each town to not have structures being built in each particular flood zone that perfectly hit, which in construction, if you're perfectly hitting, you're running a big risk of missing. So they require that extra foot, and they do it for a couple reasons. One, so it's not such a close call to make sure you hit it. But two, the National Flood Insurance has a rating system, and to get the best possible discounts for each city, the flood program looks at that town as a whole, and the more stringent the town is on their requirements for building in a flood zone, the better discount the National Floodplain Insurance Company offers to that community. So that it's a discount system where, so they just pretty much all of the towns have just adopted what their minimum requirement is. So
I know when I built my house,
Yeah.
that was one of the things I took into account because I wanted to reduce what my flood insurance would be.
Yeah.
And I noticed I could build, well, Waveland, so I live in Waveland,
Okay.
and it's 1 foot of freeboard.
Requirement. Yeah, they require no matter what.
So I was, in my particular, this is not far off of what my house would have been. And I could have built my house basically 1 foot above their requirement.
Their requirement, right?
You know, so if it was 11 foot here that was required, in Waveland, I'd have had to go 12. And you'd have had 13 and then 14. So in my house, I decided to go with the best because that was my lowest cost flood insurance.
Right. So when you let your potential insurance companies take a look at your proposed building, what you're thinking of building, in conjunction with your elevation certificate, most of these insurance companies today can do a rating and tell you if you build at requirement, it will cost you, and they'll give you a quote on whatever it would cost you to build based on the value of your house. But they'll also typically give you the option of, but if you want to do an additional foot higher than what's required, here's a reduced insurance price moving forward. And it's something to consider because your flood insurance is a bill that you just can't pay off. You pay it annually and it comes again the next year. You pay it again and it comes again the next year. So any of those bills, obviously, that you can reduce your ongoing pricing on, obviously it costs a little bit more to build the building higher with each additional foot. It does cost money, but you can pay that off. Once you pay to build your house at that extra foot or 2 foot, the cost is done once it's paid for. Now the discounts of your insurance just keep on coming every year. So it's definitely something to consider.
My old house was about 18 inches off the ground.
Okay.
When I moved to this one, what I really liked is now I have 11 feet underneath my house that we can do. It's like an outdoor patio.
Yeah, it's a complete bonus space. So on our these raised coastal homes that we do, that we have people that park their automobiles under those. We have people that screen in a big section of those raised areas. Any number of things. They're very versatile. You can close in a couple of walls and have just an automatic storage room underneath your house. So we see a lot of uses on the raised homes. But
well, in our coastal construction guide for Thornhill Construction, if you hadn't, you're probably finding this video because you're there. But if you hadn't, one of the things we're going to talk about in some of our other videos is when we talk about how to read this number and where that flood zone meets. But one of the other things we talk about is when this number calculates, depending on what flood zone it is, it depends on where in this house that they're going to start calculating that base flood elevation. So we're going to have another video here in the links, that will share that with you. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. We'll be glad to get back with you. Or you can call Jason. His number is 228-424-7773.